Number 1. I was 17 at the time, and I had just started college. I'm from the UK, so our education system is a little different than the US. So, I was waiting for my bus like I always did after my lectures. The station was pretty empty as I'd finished early that day. There was one guy standing around a corner from me near a billboard. I could see him from the corner of my eye, and I could see he was looking at me, but trying to appear as though he wasn't. I was the only person stood on that side of the station, so he had to be looking at me. I felt a little uneasy. I'm a paranoid person, so I went and stood near the food stand, as that was the only other person at the station. I kept looking around, and this guy was still watching me. Whenever I moved, he moved as well, so that he could always see me. By now, I was getting really freaked out and praying that my bus would show up soon. After about 10 minutes, this guy removed an old-school digital camera from his backpack and started taking pictures of me when he thought I wasn't aware. Unlucky for him, he had his flash turned on, so I noticed right away. As soon as I turned to him, he looked up and ran out of the bus station and into the center of the town. This experience made me even more anxious and paranoid, and I was terrified of even going to college for about 3 weeks. I never told anyone though, and luckily, I never saw this weirdo again. So to the creepy guy photographing me at the bus station, let's not meet. Number 2. When my husband and I first moved out on our own, we had this neighbor that we would sometimes see outside and would talk to. We even went to the local pool hall and played pool with him. One day we're hanging out at his house and we are sitting outside. The cutest little black kitten walks up in the yard. My husband and I are animal lovers, so I'm all about this kitten. My husband and the neighbor walk around the side of the house and are gone maybe a minute or two, and my husband returns. The look on his face was horror and fury. He looks at me and says, "He killed the cat." I get up and walk around there, and my husband is holding this kitten. The neighbor had hit him in the head with a rock, but at this point the kitten is breathing. It had knocked him out. Long story short, we took the kitten to the vet, and he had to have an eye removed. We have now had the kitten, Midnight, for about 10 years. He is good now, and one hell of a mouse killer. We found out a few years later that this neighbor had been out of town for work and was rooming with a coworker. He later went on to stab his roommate to death and returned back to his home here. It is scary to believe someone like this lived right beside us and had been in our home and we had been in his. Obviously, after the kitten thing happened, we stopped talking to him after letting him know that we thought about it and what a piece of shit he was. So, creepy ex-neighbor, let's not meet again. Number 3. Hello everyone. This is my first time posting anything of any length, so hopefully I don't screw up the formatting. Anyway, I used to work in a pretty decent sized office building. There were 2 maintenance guys there every day to do the cleaning and stuff around the building, an older one and a younger one. The younger one was kinda strange. He never talked to anyone and mostly stared at the floor when he walked around. I'm a polite person, so I'd sometimes say hello when passing. It got to where he'd say hello to me first and hold doors open for me. I never thought anything of it, as it's normal polite behavior. Fast forward a couple of months later, I started coming in each morning to find a single red rose left on my desk. I had a boyfriend who worked there at the time. and I know him well enough to know he wouldn't do something like that. We aren't terribly romantic. Neither my coworker who came in at the opening or my coworker who left at close never saw anyone leave the roses, so that meant someone was doing it either after hours or very early in the morning. After about a week or two of roses, a lady across the room filed a complaint that someone was taking roses from the bouquets her husband would send her regularly. She was missing exactly the same number of roses I had found on my desk. I got really creeped out at the idea of some rando leaving stolen roses on my desk. I also returned them to her, but this is where it gets interesting. Management checked the cameras due to the rose lady's complaint, and guess what they find? Lo and behold, the younger of the maintenance guys, butt naked, walking around the building. Naked, stealing a rose, and naked, sitting on my chair. I was never given further info on if he engaged in any more disturbing acts while sitting in my chair, completely naked, and I don't want to know. Rumor has it that there was also some very questionable and inappropriate content found on the browser history of the computer he was allowed to use in the maintenance office. Creepy maintenance dude was fired on the spot. I got a new chair ASAP and strongly considered burning all the clothes that I had worn while sitting there. So, scary neckbeard naked flower thief, I hope we never meet again. Number 4. I grew up in a strange area. It was basically a tiny ghetto in the middle of the nowhere and a lot of drug and violent crime for being in the country. As you can imagine, I have a lot of stories that fit in the theme of this subreddit as a result. This particular incident happened to me when I was 5. My mom worked a regular full-time 9-to-5 job, so my mom would leave me at my grandma's in the morning to get the bus to school, then pick me back up from her house after the bus took me there and she got home from work. My grandma was a wonderful old lady, still is, and she lived a few streets away, so it was convenient for everybody. My mother had just brought me home for the evening. She parked the car and started walking towards the house. Our neighbor John was sitting outside his home with a bunch of furniture in his yard. We usually exchanged friendly hellos, and that day was no exception. He mentioned that he was trying to get rid of the furniture surrounding him and asked if we needed anything. It was all free. My mom declined, but said that she could ask around. Being a child, I didn't think much of his response, but my mom was clearly shaken. All right, but if anyone wants it, they better hurry. It's all going up in flames. My mom tried to push it out of her mind, took me inside, and began giving me a bath. About 5 to 15 minutes after we got inside, there was a knock at the door. My mom left me in the tub to see who was there. I paid no mind and continued playing with the toys in the bath, but my mother rushed back into the bathroom shortly and frantically scooped me from the tub and began drying me. She told me to hurry and get ready. We were going to Grandma's. Again, being a kid, the fact that we were going back to Grandma's after we had just left didn't set off any alarm bells. I was just pleased to get to spend more time over there. My mom carried me outside, and that's when I realized something was seriously wrong. Mommy, why is there blood on our door? She refused to answer and kept insisting we were going to Grandma's, though I noticed there was blood splattered on the porch as well. Now, I need to explain that the closest place to our house to park a car was actually on the next street over where neighbor John lived, so we couldn't see the street the car was on until we got right up to it, where a large fleet of police and other emergency vehicles were blocking everything off. Looks like we aren't going to Grandma's after all. Boo. The whole town was there, watching a heated standoff between the police and John. He had gone on a drug-induced rampage, busted out all the windows of his home and several neighboring homes, doused the homes and himself in gasoline, and intended to blow it all sky high. It ended when he pulled a matchbook from his pocket, went to strike a match, but the book had been too saturated in gas to spark. The police tackled him to the ground, cut off his clothes. I found this next part extremely funny at the time. The other neighborhood kids and I had a heyday with the naked man story for weeks, and took him away. Since this story had been told from my perspective up to this point, you may be wondering what happened when my mom went to the door while I was in the bath. She said that when she opened the door, there was a crazed-looking John standing at the door, bleeding heavily from his hands, reeking of gasoline. She said he told her, "Get your kid and get out now. It's all going up in flames." Apparently, in his drugged-out state, he mustered up enough of a conscience to save the single mother and child from his rampage. Either way, neighbor John, let's not meet again.